It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ivy. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And absent tonight, but here in spirit, is super producer Riley Bray, whose dulcet ambient music you'll be hearing later in this episode, of course. No, Riley is never absent from an episode of the show. This is true.
No, he always has work to do. So whether he's here or not, he was going to hear this show.
He will be part of the show. Speaking of being part of the show, I want to thank all of our new listeners who have found us over the past month. We've noticed we've got a bunch of new listeners. A lot of you guys have been hitting us up on over at BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com, sending in your listener stories for our L-Files episodes.
Nice.
That's awesome. Saying that you found us through Distractable, which is kick-ass. So thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you.
Yes.
Yeah, what a great way to kick off 2023. And we've got an amazing guest for you this week. If you are familiar with any of Q Code or Wood Elves podcast, then you might be familiar with her work. This week's guest is the host of the Q Code podcast, The Afternoon Special, the show that covers everything in pop culture that you never knew to ask about but need the answers to. Club Scouts of all timelines, please welcome to the show, BOBBI MILLER.
Woo!
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Oh, so happy to be here. BOBBI, I, of course, was recently a guest on the Afternoon Special last fall. I had a wonderful time with you. And I know, after doing your show, that you're a big supernatural fan of supernatural stuff in pop culture. That's correct.
Yes, big fan.
Great.
So
Perfect.
Yeah, what kind of, for our listeners, what kind of stuff are you into?
I tend to just frequent when you came on my show, we talked about vampires, and so that's like my favorite supernatural thing. I like most vampire things, I'm on board. But I can do like ghosts. I'm on board with, but ghosts don't really scare me or anything like that.
What about a vampire ghost?
No, that could work. I think I would be on board with that. But I'm a big scaredy cat otherwise, but I appreciate the supernatural. I respect it.
Awesome.
What would a vampire's ghost's powers be? Is he a ghost that drains your blood through just vibes?
Right. I must use vibes and not my teeth.
It's probably like an energy vampire, I would guess, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I also like the idea of maybe the blood just comes out in a fine mist. You know,
osmosis.
And then they just become like a misty red ghost. That's how you can tell that they need blood, because they go from white, they go from red to white. If they're full red,
I like that.
Then they're good to go for a little while.
This is a good story. Someone,
guys,
write it down.
I think we need to get off this call right now and start a little.
And the title's not bad either. Ghost Vampire.
There you go. I love it.
Open audience.
Also, because it's a romance, most vampires are involved with romances these days. Mm-hmm. It's also a ghost vampire that's notorious for ghosting his or her lovers.
Good Gen Z layer on there.
Yeah. You got to make it modern,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to give the vampire something to overcome, beyond just their disposition.
Some type of adversity really is necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So, BOBBI, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What is your personal paranormal history? How did you get into vampires? And let's talk about some of the stuff that scares you and whether or not you've ever had been in a situation that you could not explain.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Not like, I wouldn't say the spookiest place in the world, but I feel like I've heard most of like supernatural things in Georgia tend to happen in Savannah.
Yep.
Which I've never been to, but I would sure like to go. But I don't have the most extensive supernatural history. I think when something like feels supernatural, I heard it, but I didn't hear it. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to ruffle any supernatural feathers.
Is that because you're too scared to learn anymore? You're like, I don't need to hear this right now.
Pretty much. Going off of just like the reputation of like, you know, Black people in horror films and supernatural and the like, we don't tend to last very long.
Right.
So I'm
right.
not going to, I'm not going to roll the dice with that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Things, thankfully, I feel are evening out a little bit in the horror movie category now.
Equal opportunity now.
Yeah.
So great.
Anyone could die in these movies now, which is great.
Now anyone can be abducted. Yes.
It's so
yeah.
diversity.
Yeah, which is fantastic. But you said you were scared of a lot of stuff other than ghosts. What kind of, like, out of the cryptids, like Bigfoot or Mothman? I don't know if you're familiar with Mothman.
I am not, but that sounds terrifying because I am afraid of bugs.
Mm-hmm.
An interdimensional bug being from West Virginia in the 60s, flew around, red eyes, scared a lot of people.
Huge quads, 6
Big
foot
quads,
5,
real
muscles.
leg lifter. Yeah, real leg lifter from
so
what
like
we've
kind of hot,
kind of hot. Yeah, kind of like a Batman figure, but probably no man, just sort of
just bug,
bat
just the
or
bat.
moth. Yeah, just the bat, which is, I don't know why they didn't call Mothman Batman, because he does actually resemble more of a bat than a moth, I think, or an owl.
That's fair. Most things I'm scared of, I think I would say. My biggest fear are like knives. Not a big fan of big knives. Obviously, most horror movies I cannot do. Things that I can hear first before I see them, which is strange because E.T. the Extraterrestrial is one of my favorite movies of all time. And it is, you hear E.T. before you see him. Yeah. A lot of like all of your like basic fears, I have all of those. So like bugs, heights, giants, scary sounds, knives.
Wait, giants. I don't know if giants is at the top of most people's list. What giants are you scared of?
You're not talking to the right people, Michael. Giants are scary. I don't know. Maybe because I'm 5'2", so everything's like super big to me. But giants are scary, and they're on the list.
Look, I'm not knocking giants. They are formidable adversaries in fairy tales. But when you say you're scared of giants, what are you picturing?
I think a couple weeks ago, a friend introduced me to Cthulhu, like the monster.
Yeah,
and
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm not a fan of that. I think something like looming to the point where no matter where I look, I can see it. Not a big fan. Not a big fan.
Yeah, that giant thing fascinates me because there's this whole sort of like historic lore about, possible giants that have been buried throughout the continental United States in these sort of mounds, and there is some pretty good evidence, whether it comes from, don't laugh, Michael, newspaper articles or evidentiaries type stuff. But, the Bible talks about it, these giants that inhabited the world. And they had like double rows of teeth and an extra digit, and they could just, pick you up and crush your skull within their mouth. And that does not sound fun.
I don't know. I feel vindicated in my fear of giants now. I was a little lukewarm on it before, but now I feel really
it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if I'm behind where all this giant talk is leading, but I will say they are scary. I just love that it was the third thing that you listed.
I think it just was like, that was subconscious. Like front of my mind, I was like, okay, I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of knives. I'm afraid of like, things that go bump in the night. But then something from my subconscious was like, giants too. Say that.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So what are these stories? What kind of stories would you hear growing up that you were like, no, I don't need to pay attention to this? Was there any like local folklore? I know you said Atlanta wasn't too active necessarily, but like what was in the air? What kind of stuff were you picking up when you were growing up?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, so like, suburban fears are not exactly the same as like rural fears or like, like inner city fears or anything like that. But I think just like general talks about, like Bloody Mary, like you say her name 3 times in the mirror.
Oh yeah.
Like
Michael did that. Michael and Riley did that.
Did it?
I wouldn't do it. I was like, no, hell no, I'm not doing that. Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know. Like the mirror is like, I'm looking at myself. I don't want to feel terrified. And then I go and say some random woman's name 3 times and now she's like cooped up in my house. No thanks. I think mainly like the biggest thing was for whatever reason was like some variation of like a boogeyman in your house. So like in a closet or under the bed, or like if you hang your foot off the bed, like a monster's gonna come and like grab it. That type of thing was like pretty consistent, like growing up, but nothing too central location wise. Even though I'm in the suburbs, but like we're completely surrounded by woods. So shockingly, nothing like like Bigfoot came up when I was a kid. But I don't know.
This is funny. We haven't talked a whole lot about the Boogey Man on Bigfoot Collectors Club. And this is a folk figure that everyone grew up with. The Boogey Man is going to get you. But
right.
I didn't ever have a strong sense of what the Boogey Man or who the Boogey Man was. Like, I'm interested in what both of you guys pictured in your minds when you heard the Boogey Man.
Well, and what does it mean to be got? Because I hear that too. The boogeyman will get you, but what does it mean to be got? Like, is he gonna like possess you? Is he gonna like devour you, or is he gonna like, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about that myself.
That's very true. Like, and it could be something as nice as like, oh, he gets you, but he just like wants to hang out. Because I'm sure being a monster is like not like the best for his social life.
Yeah, the boogeyman was just looking for friends, and he had like a really ironic sense of humor, and he could appreciate people that were like a little bit different.
That's the way. I mean, like we're judging the boogeyman,
but
know. He's
like, no, I'm not going to get you, but I get you. Everybody gets it wrong, and that's why I'm so alone.
People read it wrong when you write it down.
Listen, man, I get you. I get it. The boogeyman is going to get you. That's what it's supposed to be. You're not alone anymore. That's why I'm trying to come to you in the middle of the night when you're alone and sad in your room. I'm going to get you.
It was just, he wrote it down. And so if someone read it, it's like a read type of thing.
Yeah.
The PR was bad on it.
I think that boogeyman thing too, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, and you said like under the bed and in the closet, and still to this day, every night before I go to bed, I will make sure the closet doors are all the way shut in my room, in my kids' room, and I don't know what that is, but I wonder if I think that boogeyman has something to do with like under the bed, in the closet, getting you while you're like at your most vulnerable, sleeping. I wonder if there's any sort of relation to like shadow people. What's your take on the boogeyman, Michael? Are these things different, or?
I don't know. I mean, I think boogeyman comes from boger or bogart, which is like a spirit from, I think, in like Old English or Old European. So it's just like a general spirit
malfeasant
term.
Spirit, yeah.
Yeah, we covered a little bit of this recently on the other side, but the boogeyman itself just seems to be a catch-all term. But I like the idea that the boogeyman is like waiting in the little empty spaces that you leave unguarded. That's if we're like pitching supernatural superpowers tonight, like that would be the boogeyman can like occupy those slight like. The boogeyman could be in a shoebox if you left it empty or left the lid off. The boogeyman is in the cupboard that you don't close all the way or the drawer that you don't shut. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. It could also be where you place your fear. You know, if you place your fear under the bed, then that opens an opportunity for the boogeyman to inhabit it. I like that as well.
This is getting like, this feels like a therapy session. I feel like I'm starting to unpack some stuff right now.
Oh, we're only getting started,
Yeah.
Bobby. Yeah, so
We haven't even
settle
started recording yet.
Oh,
I always pictured the boogeyman being like a alabaster white old bald man with like very gaunt features, almost Gollum-esque, but his mission was to like kidnap kids.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're right. There's something about taking you away too. I think that's a part of it too, is like, you know, especially when you're a child, you don't want to be sort of abducted by something that, you know, inhabits your room and takes you away from your loved ones. But there does seem to be that connection of making you go away forever, you know, and that's a terrifying thought.
It's very terrifying.
Also kind of like an annoyed parent's secret wish in that moment. Like, oh.
Well, yeah, I think that's what it is. Parents are the boogeyman. Like, yeah, go to bed or I'm going to get you.
Boogeyman, please take my child.
Fingers crossed. Tonight's the night.
You find out that your like parents are like leaving little shoes and like little like trinkets outside to attract the boogeyman to come get their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like offerings.
Yeah, like Lunchables and little backpacks. You know.
Lunchables. So good.
Gosh. I feel like the boogeyman in my head looked like any like last pop culture monster that I saw. So like if I was watching Scooby-Doo or something, like a monster from Scooby-Doo would be the boogeyman in my head. It would just be like the last scariest thing that I saw. So it was like constantly evolving to keep up with my fears. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Shape-shifting to match whatever's the scariest thing in your mind. Let's real quick, scariest Scooby-Doo monsters from memory. Like top scary Scooby-Doo monster.
I think the one, I don't know if it was in the show. I think actually it was in the show, but it was just like a guy in like one of those like old school like scuba suits that would have the big dome heads. And I think it's the like no face of it all. And he wouldn't speak. He would just kind of like, he would just kind of like, it's like post-verbal, like no talking, you know? So there's no way to communicate like, stop to him. Like he's not here for it.
You can't even make eye contact.
No eyes, no face, nothing. But I think, and he would like kind of move slowly. And I think he had at least in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, fantastic film. He had a harpoon as a weapon of choice, which is just objectively terrifying. So that's the scariest one to me.
Bryce, do you have a Scooby-Doo?
No, I'm just impressed that you were able to pull off that answer. I can't think of a single fucking Scooby-Doo monster.
Man.
I really
that
can't.
the robot from the opening credits of the old school cartoon that had the glowing red eyes. And again, kind of like the scuba monster, like very, not a lot of humanity there, just cold, doesn't really talk. That thing was terrifying. Kind of looks like a Sentinel from the X-Men, but like, you know, person-sized. Still gives me the creeps. Who do you think, Bobby, is the ultimate pop culture monster?
Good question.
Oh gosh, that's very hard because I mean it depends on like there are like lovable monsters and then there are like intended to be scary monsters and then like where do aliens fit in that? Like are aliens monsters?
I would say yes.
Well, if aliens are monsters, I mean I'm biased, but I would say E.T. Like that's the definitive like pop culture monster.
Also
he's scary,
terrifying,
but lovable.
Yeah, terrifying.
But once you get to know him, he's like the boogeyman. It's just the PR is bad. That's the issue. A lot of these monsters just have really bad PR. And I'm here to correct E.T.'s PR. He's not that
We've
bad.
done some unpacking of E.T. on this podcast over the years. And I think the thing that freaks you out when you were a little, like Bryce and I saw this movie. You're too young, Bobby, but we saw it in the theaters. And I was 4 years old when this thing came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think because the scene where Elliot meets E.T. is played like a horror scene. You know, where he goes, he throws the ball into the garden shack and it rolls back out. And, you know, and he's going through the cornfield. And E.T.'s first appearance is a jump scare. Mm-hmm. And they're both terrified. So I think there was this weird thing set in your brain as a little kid where you're first taught to be scared of E.T. And then he turns great.
Yeah.
And then he starts to die in front of you. So, like, there's never a point in the movie where you can really trust what's going on with this little guy.
Oh, my God.
That is very fair. I think the scariest part of that movie is when he is dying and he turns, like, an ash white and he's laying in
He looks like an old dog turd laying in the creek, and it is the most terrifying thing you've ever seen.
While he's like cosmically linked with this boy who's also dying. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I need to.
Yeah.
You can't trust him. He keeps, once you think you have ET figured out, he changes on you. And then at the end of the movie, he just becomes Jesus. So it's very strange.
Right.
You know, it's like, wait, you can die and be resurrected? Okay, now what's happening? I don't get you. You know what? We need the Boogey Man because I don't get you, E.T.
I remember coming out of the theater, my dad holding me and just bawling.
Wait, you or your dad or both?
Me.
Oh, yeah.
He was, I was like in total tears. You know, and it's funny that scene with the baseball that came out of the shed. My dad had a shed like that, and I was scared of his shed. So I felt like I was crying because I was sad for E.T., and I was also crying because I had to go back to my dad's house where that same shed existed. I was like, no. But it was pretty horrifying. You know, Bobby, I don't know if you know that, but know this, but we've talked a little bit about this as well. The story of E.T. kind of evolved and stemmed from an actual case that took place out of Kentucky called the Hopkinsville Goblin case, and it sort of evolved into this movie that became E.T. Spielberg wanted to write about these goblin cases, but it ended up, being transformed into this story of a boy's relationship with an alien. And but it is pretty fascinating that story actually comes from a real monster or goblin, whatever that means. But I thought that was interesting.
That is really interesting. I've always the only thing I've heard about the origins of E.T. is it was a story for Spielberg to kind of work through his parents' divorce and the very emotional bits of it. But to know that it's based off of something real makes it scarier.
But instead of a little boy making friends, it's a bunch of hillbillies shooting at it with shotguns.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was there any local monster that you heard about? If you go down to this bridge or you go to this place at night, this ghost will show up. Any haunted houses in your neighborhood that you ever heard about growing up?
Ooh, not really, which sucks because I wish I probably would have had a much more exciting childhood if there was
You didn't have a complete childhood unless there was a haunted house in your neighborhood, Bobby.
I know. It was I think because a lot of because when I was growing up, we had social media, we had all of these devices to debunk all of these urban legends and stuff. By the time I was growing up, the fun was ruined. We were all too jaded to believe in
Depends
monsters
on what corners
and
of the internet you're using your device
That
for.
is very true. That is very true.
Only amplified some of these things in other corners of the internet.
That is fair. But at least for my little corner of the internet where I was growing up, we didn't really have anything like that. I think a lot of the fears that we had were real things that had happened, murders and whatnot. So that's a fear, but not a monster. So,
Well, depends on the way you look at it, isn't it?
Darns.
Yeah.
I wish I had a story about a monster.
No
Only
worries.
Serial killers.
Hey, we'll all go to Savannah together. Maybe we need a ghost tour. The BCC needs a traveling ghost tour.
We should record an episode in a Savannah graveyard, like one of the cemeteries, because those are supposed to be super, super haunted.
That would be cool.
Hey, I will make myself available. I'm down.
Nice.
All right. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna play our favorite game with Bobby and get into this week's topic of high strangeness. Okay, Bobby, we have a game that we like to play with all of our guests. I'm going to go down a list of phenomena. And I've kind of, so like we got into a little bit of a debate on this, just sidebarring real quick, Bryce, when we had Ryan Gall on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about it and listening back to that episode. And, I was like, if you're open to it, you're going to say, believe it. If you're not open to it, you're going to say bullshit. And that's kind of the way I have framed this game for the past 5 years. But I think really what it is, if you have to make a rash decision one way or another, you got, like, for lack of a better term, if there was a gun to your head and you had to be like, I believe it or I don't believe it, that's what this game is. What does your gut say? Let's take the thinking out of it. Let's get back to, there's no guns, but let's get back to the rapid fire, whatever comes to you in the moment, and we can still circle back and unpack something if we need to.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, Bobby, we're going to go down a list, and if you believe it, you're going to say believe it. If you don't believe it, you're going to say bullshit. All right?
Okay.
This is a game that we call bullshit
Or believe it.
All right, we're going to go fast.
Okay.
We're shaking it up in 2023. We've gotten a little too liberal with this game. I think you were right, Bryce. I'm doubling down. I'm getting more hardcore about BS or BI. All right, here we go.
Good.
Okay.
Bobby Miller, on your mark. Get set. Ghosts.
Believe it.
Bigfoot.
Bullshit.
UFOs.
Believe it.
Mothman.
Bullshit?
Curses.
Believe it.
Possessed dolls.
Believe it.
The Bermuda Triangle.
Believe it.
The Hollow Earth.
Bullshit. I don't know what that is.
There are alien constructs on the moon.
Bullshit.
Psychic visions.
Believe it.
Dreams are really other realities, and when you fall asleep, you visit them.
Believe it.
Time travel.
Believe it.
Bending spoons with your mind.
Bullshit.
Entities from other dimensions visit our world.
Believe it.
Pets see spirits.
Believe it.
Tarot cards.
Believe it.
The Loch Ness Monster.
Bullshit.
The government is hiding the truth about Roswell.
Believe it.
We are living in a simulation.
Bullshit.
You could outsmart a werewolf.
Believe it.
Planet Earth is a sentient macroorganism.
Believe it.
The universe is looking out for you.
Believe it.
And finally, do you remember the famous Bear family's last name spelled as Berenstein or Berenstain?
Berenstein.
All right, there you go. I still don't know if that last question should be in there, but you know what? I think that worked. That was great. No hemming or hawing. Commitment all the way.
Yeah.
The one you fumbled on a little bit was the Loch Ness Monster, I think.
Yeah.
Switch to a hard bullshit.
That one's hard because I saw something like debunking it, and so I think that like worked its way into my brain, and it's what made me say bullshit.
But there was a time in your life when you were like, you know what?
I believe in Nessie.
Maybe.
I did.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Here on the BCC, we debunk the debunkers, so we can get you back. We can get you back to Nessie.
Okay, I'm open. I'm an open thinker. So,
any of those other ones jump out to you, Bryce?
I did like how she I watched her mind work when she was like, could I outsmart a werewolf? And she's like, oh fuck yeah, I could.
I mean, you've read a lot of books and seen a lot of movies with werewolves as characters, I assume. How would you outsmart a werewolf?
honestly, I think with all the vampire media I've seen and like the one natural like opponent to the vampire is the werewolf, I just feel like I could just take one of those like squeaky bones and just be like, here, and then like take it because they're dogs. Like that's what it is. They're just dogs.
They are just dogs.
I can outsmart a dog, I think. I went to college, like I can figure that out.
You just got to carry a bone with you into the woods.
I don't know.
That's it.
I'm in a daily battle with one of my dogs every day. I don't know if I can say I'm smarter than her. One of them, I'm pretty sure we were fine, but the other one, I don't know. She's definitely the boss of me.
I've never had a dog, but I'm like, I've always been good around dogs. Like dogs don't dislike me, so I feel like a werewolf is just an evolution of that. One squeaky toy, and I've outsmarted it completely.
I feel like a high voice would work. Like, hey, buddy, hey,
yeah.
Hey, what are you doing out here? No, don't show your teeth. No. Hey, I'm your friend. Who's a good boy?
Now
That's all it takes.
I just want a werewolf movie where the werewolf hunter just talks in a sweet high pitched voice to all the werewolves.
I got this, you guys. Just watch me work. Yeah. Hey.
All right. Well done, Bobby. It's time for this week's, would you say topic or story of high strangeness for this week, Bryce?
Let's stick with the story. It's a story, or
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. You know me. I'm a little on the fringes, so sometimes it can be a story, a topic, or a tiny little bio.
Sometimes it's
gonna be
something.
strange. Oh.
Sometimes it's a review that you looked up on Amazon to get an opinion on.
You don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Good. Me too.
Well, let's hear it, Bryce.
Should I start? Okay.
Yes.
Is that my cue?
That was pretty much set you up for it.
Great. Here we go. All right. Now, it's a new year, Club Scouts, a time to reflect on the years past, a time to recommit to those things that compel us, a time of renewal, a time to rethink our concept of what we consider high strangeness. And so I offer you the psychology of the strange. Let us begin with a quote from J.B.S. Haldane, a British biochemist. Quote, "The world is not only stranger than we suppose, it is stranger than we can suppose." Strange is defined as unusual or surprising in a way that is unsettling or hard to understand, not previously visited, seen, or encountered. Along our journey together, Club Scouts, we've come across some poignant voices within the world of the paranormal, voices who have prompted us to perhaps look this way instead of that. Voices like John Tenney, whom I admire greatly as not only a thinker on these topics of high strangeness, but as someone who walks the walk of the strange. Tenney has been kind enough to appear on our podcast a few times, and we were lucky enough to get him to play our little in-house game, which you just played, Bobby, Bullshit or Believe It. And I suppose I found it a little shocking that he called bullshit on just about all of it. What can I say? He's the yin to my yang, because, as you know, I'm a believe it type of guy. Hell, I'm even willing to give mermaids their due. Well, guess what? I think we were both right. How comfortable are you with paradox, dear listener? You should be when discussing the strange. Paradox is defined as a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that, when investigated or explained, may prove to be well-founded or true. Due to the nature of my work as a Bigfoot hunter, I often get asked if I really believe in Bigfoot. And I thought a lot about that question. Believe you me, I have. And seeing as how it's a new year, I've come up with a new answer. Let's give it a try, shall we?
Okay, Bryce, do you really believe in Bigfoot?
Yeah, of course I do, man. Duh.
Oh, come on, Bryce. It's me, Michael. Do you really believe in Bigfoot?
No, absolutely not, man. Don't be ridiculous. And here's why. Because on the face of it, it's absurd. It's absurd to think that there is a giant primate roaming our forests at will. And not only our forests, but our swamps, meadows, even our flatlands across the Great Plains. Hell, even Atlanta. All claiming to harbor a 1,000-pound missing link. And it's not just here in the good old US of A that all this occurs, but all over the world, on just about every continent. From the frozen Himalayas to the jungles of South America, from the fertile lowlands of China to the Ural mountain ranges of Russia, even Australia's getting in on the mix. Crikey! Or should I say, yowie! And it's not just one type of Bigfoot that gets reported either. It's all kinds of Bigfoots. Big, little, red, brown, black, white, four-toed, three-toed, aggressive, passive, mind speaker, fire starter. The list goes on and on and on. It's the ultimate variety pack. In my humble opinion, this simply stretches the limit case for credulity. In other words, I'm not buying it. Not in the sense that we're told to buy it, at least. How can this be? Exactly what the hell's going on here? Let's examine further. We know so very little about the human mind and its potential capabilities. We scratch our heads to find the simplest solutions to our most complex problems. Our scientists tell us to use Occam's razor, which states that in trying to understand something, getting unnecessary information out of the way is the fastest way to the truth or to the best explanation. Well, good luck with that. How are we to define unnecessary information? Are glowing orbs unnecessary information? Are piloted light ships seen before or after a Bigfoot encounter unnecessary information? Is Bigfoot using ESP unnecessary information? I think not. In other words, there is no simple explanation for the Bigfoot phenomenon. Occam's razor will not work here. It will not get the job done. And so, we must look for other solutions. And in so doing, we often grasp at and even accept stranger alternatives. Well, if Bigfoot's not some unconfirmed flesh and blood creature, then he must be some type of interdimensional interloper. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Look, I love the interdimensional portal-hopping Bigfoot theory just as much as anybody else. Hell, I've been espousing it for the last 5 years. But I think this is just another way of trying to conveniently solve the problem, or grasping at straws, so to speak. We know nothing of other dimensions, only that our quantum physicists tell us they may exist, and that perhaps these dimensions can sometimes bleed over into our reality, which is also up for grabs, by the way. Reality? Who the fuck knows what that is? Reality itself is on shaky ground. The reductionist materialist cuts and measures the smallest bits of matter we know of, yet we somehow never get to the bottom of it. We cut and measure, cut and measure, cut and measure, but we never get to the prima materia. It never ends. Ever. There is no smallest bit of matter. All we find is more space. Let's do a little thought experiment, shall we? Bobby, Michael, you guys ready for this? Have you ever wondered why the Great Pyramid of Giza is missing its capstone? I have. And man, those Egyptians really knew their shit.
Well,
now,
wait a minute. Let Bobby have a moment to answer your question.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, Bobby, have you ever wondered why the Great Pyramid of Giza is missing the top or its capstone?
I have.
Good. Okay, great. Now, I want you guys to imagine the Great Pyramid in your mind's eye. Now, I want you to place an imaginary capstone on top of the pyramid. Only the top of your imaginary capstone, which basically looks like a much smaller pyramid, also has no capstone. So now you'll need to place another imaginary capstone on top of the previous one, and so on and so forth. You could keep doing this forever, and perhaps you should tonight whilst trying to go to sleep. Now, to quote from the late great Manly P. Hall in his magnum opus, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, he tells us, quote, "There's a curious tendency among the builders of great religious edifices to leave their creations unfinished, thereby signifying that God alone is complete. That capstone, if it existed, was itself a miniature pyramid, the apex of which again would be capped by a smaller block of similar shape, and so on ad infinitum. The capstone, therefore, is the epitome of the entire structure. Thus, the pyramid may be likened to the universe and the capstone to man."
You mean the epitome of the entire
Epitome.
structure?
That's some
Epitome.
deep shit right there. But I digress. Let's get back to our furry forest friend, Mr. Bigfoot. Why do we so fervently believe in its existence? Perhaps it's because of the cornucopia of supposed evidence, the countless reports going back centuries, the footprints, the blurry photos, the hair and scat samples, the inconclusive DNA results, the Patterson-Gimlin film footage, for Christ's sake. Come on, man. Yeah, look, I love all that stuff too. I really do. But I can tell you with utmost certainty that every single one of those examples is mired in controversy. So what then, Bryce? What the fuck is going on? What are you positing? Well, I've thought a lot about that. And fortunately or unfortunately for you, dear listener, I have one. I propose that Bigfoot is a psychological archetype representing our species' past potential and its exit from the dark forests and into the blubbering life of a city dweller. It's us questioning whether or not we made the right move. Perhaps we should have stayed behind in nature and developed our senses and skills there. Maybe only then could we have avoided the planetary peril that we currently find ourselves in. But wait, there's more. Speaking of planetary peril and apocalyptic visions, let's take a look at what we generally refer to as the alien gray. Bobby, you know what I'm talking about, right? The alien gray with the big head, right? It's pretty much exact opposite of our primitive forest dweller. It has a huge brain for thinking and mind mechanics, a small mouth for clicking noises, and food pills, maybe, I don't know. You ever heard of an account of a story where an alien gray's eating a steak? Yeah, me neither. And so, I propose that this alien gray archetype represents our psychological future potential. And so now, let us examine both of these images or archetypes juxtaposed against each other. We have Bigfoot at one end of the spectrum, representing our potential past, and the alien gray at the other end, representing our potential future. Which begs the question, where do we fit into all of this? To which I say, right in the middle, at the very center. We as humans are halfway between the nature man and the spaceman. When we encounter a Bigfoot in the woods or an alien gray on a spaceship, we are encountering alternate versions of ourselves. Now, don't think that for 1 minute what I'm saying is that these things are not real. Of course they're real, in the same sense that everything else is real. Real is defined as actually existing as a thing or occurring in fact, not imagined or supposed. And I agree with that. Michael did not imagine the thing in his window, nor did I imagine the devil in mine. They were real. But that does not mean that they propagate throughout time. And so, I would like to propose my new theory.
Oh, shit.
Novelty Introduction for Advanced Evolution, or NIFAE for short. Allow me to explain. Novelty is defined as the quality of being new, original, or unusual, something intended to be amusing as a result of its new or unusual quality. And I'm reminded of the case of chicken farmer Joe Simonton, who claims that on April 18, 1961, a UFO landed at his farm in Eagle River, Wisconsin. Joe claimed that when he approached the craft, a metallic door opened to reveal 3 tiny Italian-looking aliens making pancakes atop their ship's flameless stovetop, of which they offered him a few in exchange for some water. What? Novelty. According to the National Library of Medicine, environmental novelty is associated with an increase in FOS expression in the output elements of the hippocampal formation and the perirhinal cortex. In other words, when something new and unexplainable enters into our environment, it causes a surge in neuroplasticity, i.e., our brains grow. Now, if our destiny is out there amongst the stars, which I believe it is, then novelty must be introduced into our environment in order for us to grow, change, adapt, and evolve. Biggie and E.T. allow us the opportunity to grapple with our own evolutionary tract and perhaps even our cosmic destiny. Which begs another question in all of this. Just who is introducing this novelty into our environment? Is it God? Is it the devil? Is it us in our collective unconscious? Or is it the star people themselves? I'm not quite sure about that. The jury's still out. I do know, however, that there's plenty of novelty to contend with. Dogmen, frogmen, lake monsters, lizard people, Sasquatch, Pleiadians, Venusians, mermen, merwomen, tin can pilots from Zeta Reticuli, and little green goblins. You name it. There's no shortage of the strange. We're awash in it. So instead of trying to figure out if Bigfoot is real or not, perhaps we should be asking ourselves a different question. Why are we seeing Bigfoot? Why are we seeing the alien gray? And what could it possibly all mean? To me, it's a telling sign that we are trapped in stasis between worlds. We've abandoned our deep spiritual connection with nature, which Bigfoot represents. And at the same time, we are relying solely on our technological prowess, devoid of any spirituality, to explore outer space, which I believe the alien gray represents. In other words, we are denying the true nature of ourselves. And so, we are being confronted with what we are not. We are not that primal primate who has full faculty over his extrasensory perception and is in constant communion with nature. And we are not that fully conscious cosmonaut who boldly traverses the stars in either physical or ethereal form. But we can be. At least that's what I think. What do you think, dear listener?
Wow. I mean, You've got your TED Talk. If you need it, Bryce, it's right here. It's here. I think I mean, this is it's at the very least, it's your next op-ed piece about High Strangeness.
I've thought about this a lot, and it makes sense to me. If there's any making sense of any of it, What do you think, Bobby?
That was beautiful. Like, I was enraptured by all of that. I have a very incomplete philosophy minor from the University of Georgia, so that took me all the way back to college. And just thinking beyond what we see. I love that. I love Bigfoot as where we were, and the alien gray is where we could be, and this meandering gray area that we find ourselves in right now. I love that. That's so great.
Thank you.
If it's evolving, though, if we're evolving, then when you say we're not that and we're not the alien, but weren't we, and aren't we headed there? Or
I don't think so. I think they represent potentialities. I don't think there ever was what we think of Bigfoot in the past or even today. And I don't know if I think that there ever is or is going to be the alien gray. I think they're projections of our psyche, of our collective psyche. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that it cannot leave physical evidence like a footprint. Carl Jung, the famed Swiss psychologist, had no problem with physical psychic projection. He felt that psychic projection could manifest physically in our 3D world. So, of course, a UFO can land on a chicken farm in Wisconsin. And of course, an alien gray can show up in your bedroom window, and it's going to be real. But like I said, what the fuck is real?
First of all, it was my living room window, not my bedroom window. And if you don't know what he's talking about, we tell this story in our very first episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Yes.
My dogs woke me up barking at something in a window, and it looked a lot like an alien gray. I've never seen it before or after. So what you're saying, Bryce, Bobby, help me out here if you so choose to. What you're saying is basically our subconscious or our collective unconscious is sort of 3D printing, for lack of a better term, these archetypes into our world, and that there's some sort of projected living, waking dream.
I think you said that exactly right. Absolutely. When we encounter novelty, I think something happens within our brain chemistry, and possibly even within the environment around us. You often hear that, before a UFO appears, the sound goes completely out. Same with Bigfoot. The sound of nature just stops. Sometimes people even hear a metallic buzzing noise. What is that? What's going on there? And I don't know if it's us, or I don't know if it's something outside of us. I do believe that there is call it what you will, a creator, a great unseen force of the universe, and perhaps that's what's delivering us these images. I don't know, but I do know that there can't be that many fucking Bigfoots across the globe, right? I mean, come on, what are we talking about here?
I mean, to me, it just feels like maybe you haven't looked hard enough, Bryce, because you've got a show and you haven't got one. You got to work.
Well, hopefully we get a season
harder.
5, and I can explore further.
Bobby, excuse me. All it takes is a name to start with the same letter these days for my brain. Bobby, any final thoughts on maybe the construction of reality and whether or not we're psychically projecting these beings into our world, or something outside of us might be dreaming them into existence?
Honestly, I think that us kind of psychically mapping beings into our world makes a lot of sense. A lot of monsters that are super duper popular, especially within the horror genre, or reflections of our societal fears. And so that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility that we could somehow be able to extract all of these internal fears, or, rumblings in our head or anything like that. It doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility for that to manifest in the conscious. And then
especially then when we then go make movies that reflect that idea back at us again, and suddenly we're in this sort of feedback loop, where we're just looking at the, and then it's ping-ponging through time between
pretty
us,
much, yeah.
between us and it. I don't know, you pretty heady stuff this week, Bryce, but fun stuff to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Get those wheels turning. Bobby, we're wrapping up our session here in the clubhouse. Thank you so much for being part of the show and being our guest. Where can people find the afternoon special? Where can people find you? You're very active on TikTok and all the other social medias, probably ones we've never even heard of. So where can our listeners find and follow you?
You can find me at the Afternoon Special on Instagram and on TikTok. I make video essays about all things pop culture. You can find me on Twitter at Hi, I'm Bobby, HIIMBOBBI, where I am yelling and screaming about all things. So if that sounds good, then that's where I am. And my podcast, The Afternoon Special. I post an episode every single Wednesday, and you never know what you're going to get. It's a real mixed bag, but it's a fun time, I think.
Awesome.
I'm biased.
Yeah, check out the episode that I did. Start there. Why not?
Michael was my first guest, and I think it was first guest, best guest to me.
Great. Love it. Only guest? Maybe. We'll find out.
Not the only guest, but...
All right, Club Scouts, as we're wrapping this up, do us a solid favor. Please follow and rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. If you write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we might read it on the show, like this one that Bryce has got for you.
The Dragon Aquarius writes, college students love the BCC boys. I've been listening to these guys since I was an undergraduate in college, so of course I had to drag the BCC boys to grad school with me. Hell yeah! They keep my spirits up during difficult semesters, and I love the company Michael, Bryce, and Riley give me while researching my papers. My favorite guests are Craig Ferguson and John E.L. Tenney. Gotta have his friend and co-host Jessica Napick on the pod sometime. Looking forward to your 2023 content. 5 stars.
Awesome. Thank you so much, the Dragon Aquarius. Excuse us. Good luck on your next test. And yeah, we'd love to have Jessica on. We'll definitely get her on the show this year. If you want more BCC, you can join our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, for 3 additional exclusive episodes every month. That's over at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club and on TikTok. We're on TikTok now. I mean, I'm starting to put more stuff up at BCC Pod, right in with your personal spooky story at BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com. And not only was I recently on Bobby's show, I was recently on the podcast Lost, Found, and Rewound, co-hosted by Chris from Suneaters. We chatted about my favorite horror movie of all time. Bobby, I don't know if you have an opinion on this, Hereditary.
Terrifying. 10 out of 10 terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. So check that out. Also check out my other podcast, Slate Your Name. We are in between seasons right now, but the first 2 seasons are up. Follow me on Instagram at McMills and hit me up on Cameo for a personalized video for yourself or a loved one. Bryce, what do you got?
I'll tell you, I'm just gonna plug for you, the new listener. Thanks for coming on aboard. I hope you enjoy this journey with us that we've been on. It's a hell of a ride. Thanks for being part of the Club Scout family. We're happy to have you.
Great. Okay, we're crossing over to the other side for a listener-prompted out there conversation. Things always get weird when we do one of those. If we don't see you there, we'll see you back here next week for an all-new episode of BCC. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed.
Thanks, Bobby.
Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan and scored and engineered by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Do us a favor and support the show and unlock 3 bonus episodes every month by becoming a member of our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, which can be found at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.